Myself. Can everybody see the screen share now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Excellent. Hi, everybody. I'm Jocelyn and I'm really pleased to be here with all of you. The work that Steven and I are going to share with you has been work that we've been connected to for a few years now. Steven and I met back in 2018 in Banff and was introduced to this work there when we had the honor to have Vanessa Andriotti come and share the work at a social innovation residency that we were at. And it really speak to us, resonated with the work that we were doing. And since then we have been, deepening our learning and practice with it, and see the entanglements of this work with the Indigenous communities in Canada, Peru, Mexico, and Brazil that the collective works with, learns with, shares some deep roots with. And we recognize that while we're doing this work, that the Indigenous peoples that have contributed to this knowledge and the other non-humans that share this land with us also pay the highest price for the privilege that we have as settlers. And you can see on the slide, Steven did a drawing of North and South America, and you can see where we are positioned. I am in Jubuktuk, in Mi'kma'ki, in the unceded ancestral and traditional territories of the Mi'kmaq, otherwise known as Halifax, Nova Scotia. Steven, I'll let you.
Yeah, and I'm Steven Penno, and I'm calling today from Tiohtià:ke, an unceded territory from the Mohawk people, but also a land of gathering for many Indigenous communities, also known as Montreal. And finally, I'll acknowledge that many elders, activists, artists, practitioners, knowledge keepers, and researchers in Black, anti-racist, queer, anti-ableism, social justice, Indigenous perspective have been of great guidance in the building of this work. So many of those teachings come from experiences of oppression. May we welcome them with openness and healthy skepticism while we work together toward interrupting these cycles of harm as they show up in ourselves and our communities, and in the many ways our systems are built around us. So we are deeply grateful for the many gifts we received from the collective. And we're also entangled in this work and really in a spirit of reciprocity with the collective and with the communities in many ways, as a way to also work towards embodying the new ways of relationship and ways of being that this collective teaches us, and that the methods and methodologies teach us. So we'll keep going down this invitation and layer it down. I mean.
So we felt like it was important to position the kind of work that we're going to be doing together. And so we wanted to be able to offer this cartography and framing. So we often think of education as only happening in schools, in primary, secondary, post-secondary schools. The work of the collective really pushes beyond that, and that education is happening all the time as we are processing and learning and integrating our ways of seeing the world. And so this cartography is really a helpful tool for us to be able to think about the ways that dominant Western, modern, colonial frames of education are, and what is being offered in this kind of work as a framing. So not as binary or one or the other, but just as different sensibilities towards education. Molly used the word sensibility earlier as well, and we use that very intentionally because it's not just about an intellect and a way of thinking, but it's about a way of being. It's about a whole body experience. And so that's what we're being offered here. And when we were going through this and thinking about how we're framing and structuring, as Molly suggested earlier on, we thought that this kind of model of thinking about education and positive education that is most predominant in Western cultures of filling up a cup, and the negative kind of education of peeling back an onion, or as Steven was just saying, going into the deep layers, is helpful because it highlights some of the expectations that we might have in the way we expect a course like this might go. And in particular, we were talking about this idea of universal reason, or the idea that there is a true knowledge, one true knowledge, that some are more valid and some are maybe not valid at all. And that the idea around positive education with the kind of right information, skills, and competency focus, that we can gather up all the right information and skills and competencies to be successful and a valued person within modernity is kind of how this is framed. That often in positive education, it is teacher as knower of this one universal knowledge, and that students can then gather that through, ensuring that preferences and likes and dislikes are really are highlighted, and that it's about feeling empowered and strengthening egos or identities through this educational experience. Whereas with negative education, it's a mode of education that's really designed to prompt us to dig deeper and relate wider. It's about really rearranging the modern colonial desires for right information, for value as competencies, for knowing the one truth, but to rearrange those and reorient those in a non-coercive way to mobilizing our responsibility before thinking about our will, inviting us to become open to being taught by the world in ways that we don't expect or we wouldn't expect. It invites us to look at the layers of what we are learning about our social conditioning, so our ways of thinking, our ways of knowing, and our ways of being, focusing on complexity and acknowledging the multiplicity of perspectives, starting first within ourselves, and we'll talk more about this a little bit later on, but starting within ourselves so that we can begin to see the complexity around us even more. And there's an emphasis on difficulties and learning from resistance with negative education or onion peeling. That in fact, this is the teacher, the discomfort and the resistance that we might feel in ourselves or in our group, that this is the teacher and what do we have to learn from it. It often feels disarming and scales down the importance of our individual egos, and rather turns to what is most important from our learnings, our individual observations and learnings for the collective, for this group of people. What is most important for this group of people to learn? So positive education is the filling of the cup, and you can see the cup is the ego, this individual focused, and the onion layers of the negative education peeling of the onion is the other. So there's a prompting in positive education around what is liked and what is disliked, what do you agree with, what do you not agree with, what do you identify with or disidentify with, a real focus on whether or not things fit within your worldview or your self-image, while as with negative education, it's about much more about an invitation to inquiry into existence. Supporting people to witness what exists and what insists, what they resist and try to run away from, and how different modes of knowing and being might mobilize different kinds of relations and possibilities for transforming the world. So while positive education focused at predefined points of arrival, so in this case, maybe it might be, you know, that point of arrival of decolonization. Negative in education focuses on movement, interaction. So rather than being decolonized, it's moving towards. It's a different kind of orientation. And in particular around activating exiled capacities that have been taken place through the experience of colonization. And that negative education is also about this holding of space for difficult and painful things, and for sensing and relating and imagining otherwise. So in this space, and the invitation that we're setting for you, it is, and this is something that Vanessa shared with us back in 2018, the words really stuck home, particularly for me. I was disarmed and really fell in love with this term, which is that we lovingly don't care what you think, but we have, or what you like or dislike, but we have ultimate regard and care deeply about your willingness and ability to relate wider and dig deeper. So that is what how we're approaching this as a pedagogical experience. And I will leave it to Steven to go a little bit deeper on the next slides.
Yeah, and for us, Jocelyn and I, coming from also, our work is embedded in spaces of innovation, of social innovation, that is in a culture of positive education, where we think that it's always about a lack of information. So if we find the right information, we're going to solve our problems. As we already have so many informations about the crisis that are happening and that we are facing, yet collectively we're not really adapting to that. So is it really a problem of information, or a problem of how we welcome and sit with those realities? So this is, I think, a way that Jocelyn and I got called into these methods of you're seeing now compost, and this is how the collective really formulated the practice of negative learning or unlearning, and looking inward not thinking that decolonization will happen when everybody's going to have the right information, but when we're going to stop repeating colonial ways of being. So this compost practice is capacity for holding space for painful and difficult things that are irritating and overwhelming, but without being immobilized or wanting to be cuddled or rescued. Honing up to one's complicity and implication in harm, the harms of violence and unsustainability required to create and maintain the world as we know it, with the pleasures, the certainties, and the securities that we enjoy with it. The maturity to face and work on the individual and collective shit, rather than denying on dumping it onto others or spreading it around. To make pause with narcissistic, hedonistic, and fixing compulsions in order to identify, interrupt, and disinvest from harmful desires, entitlements, projection, fantasies, and idealizations. To other or self-images and self-narratives in order to encounter the self beyond the self, including the beautiful, the ugly, the broken, and the fucked up in everything and everyone. And developing stamina and sobriety to show up differently, to do what is needed rather than what is pleasurable, easy, comfortable, consumable, and or convenient. And finally, turning towards unlimited responsibility with humility, compassion, serenity, openness, solidarity, mutuality, and without investments in purity, protagonism, progress, and popularity. So this compost practice is, in a way, a good metaphor of processing the way the cycles show up in us, and really unpeeling our own onions, and really taking time to sit with what is coming with that. And you'll see further today we'll present also tools to work with this composting practice. And the way it usually works is by prompting with stimuluses that can be poems, images, cartographies, text, and they can be many things, but the idea is to sit together with them, to welcome those things, and to sit with them with this compost posture or attempt of being differently. So a last reminder that as you engage with this work, please remember that our tools are pedagogical. They are not meant to describe reality comprehensively and universally, nor predict the future, but to draw attention to processes and dynamics that are often actively avoided, and to expand our capacity for difficult conversations where relationships do not fall apart. And do you have something to add to that, Jocelyn?
Just that this is really an invitation to be on a journey with us, where there's not a full map, but there is a guide and some guideposts that we'll follow along the way. And also, we should have mentioned early on that you will have this slide deck, and there will be additional resources at the end of the slide deck for you to be able to access. So not to worry about having to write everything down at all. You will have access to it and places to dig deeper as well.
Thank you. So as I was saying, the approach of the collective, working with stimulus and this negative way of education, works around mostly this tool of the bus, which is the container. So each time we're gonna look at a stimulus, we're gonna read a poem, we're gonna then use the bus to get in conversation about those stimulus. So the bus is really gonna be a methodology that is gonna follow us throughout the entire classes. And it's really something that for Jocelyn and I has become a regular practice to engage in this composting thing. So the bus is about holding a container, hosting ourselves and each other with courage, humility, sobriety, generosity, and with radical tenderness. So the bus is a central figure in a methodology for collective inquiry that emerged as a response for the need for difficult and honest and sober conversations, where, as I just said, we maintain the relationship. And this is a non-Western psychoanalytic methodology that is being tested by the collective. And that is really throughout the entire work. And the bus, you see the bus has many decks, and it has 4 decks. So the first one is the me deck. Then there's the me and you deck that relates to what we identify as community. Then there's the me in you deck and the neither me nor you deck. The third and the fourth deck, we actually don't talk a lot about them because they are entanglements and relationship that are bigger than community or cosmology or things that we are able to relate to with colonial language. So the limits of our language doesn't allow us to speak about those layers, because in colonial ways of being, we have psychoanalysis that is unable to describe or articulate the complexity of the third and fourth layers. So it's Western psychoanalysis is about encapsulate and making prescriptive diagnosis, where the bus is a wider invitation and more open invitation about you are going to look at things for yourself, and we're not going to prescribe any idea or write ideas about what is the way forward. So if you go to the next slide, Jocelyn.
Can I add one thing here,
Yes,
Steven?
of course
I just wanted to relate it to the foundation of modernity and colonial ways of thinking, of separability. So humans as separate from the land, separate from the universe, and exceptional in some ways, and that separability has exiled capacities for us to see our interconnection and entanglement with others. And I think, you know, I in my intro small group, breakout group, got to hear a little bit more about the Sisters of Earth and the deep connection with land, and that how much that is embodied in that work. And I think, you know, that points to a little bit of being able to access those, but really there is also a barrier in the language of thinking about the world and each other in those deeply entangled ways. So, and that really learning the methodology is about getting this capacity to see ourselves. And I think there's, you know, lots of work out there that change comes from within, that also supports this work. Now I'll move on. There you go, Steven.
So the figure of the bus is used to examine the affective dimension of a relationship with knowledge and knowledge production, to face and sit with paradoxes, contradictions, complexities, and diversities internal to oneself, to observe the symptoms and effects of one's attachment to coherence, authority, certainty, virtue, mastery, leadership, superiority, and control. To build stamina to engage productively and agnostically with dissonance, dissensus, complicity, conflict, ambivalence, divergence, indeterminacy, incommensurability, excuse my French, I'm French, to reduce collective anxieties and to transform conflict into generative experiences. So we gave many layers around the bus, but it's a practice that we're gonna start doing together, and that we're gonna start in simple matters, and then we just layer upon it. So you can switch slide, or yeah.
Yeah, so if we were to get to know what this container is, this tool and methodology. It's beginning to imagine each of us on this call. I think there is, if my math is right, there should be 50 of us. Is that right? There were 47, and then there's 3 of us presenters, that's 50. That there would be 50 buses on this call. And so imagining each of yourselves as a bus, a single layer bus at this point in time, and that each bus, there's a driver, there are passengers gathered at the front, in the middle, and at the back of the bus. And that this deck is the me deck, or the me level of your bus. That on your bus, that there are passengers that you know and passengers that you don't know. And there are passengers who draw your attention. They're probably people that you know really well, who come up all the time. And there's others who want to hide from you. And the methodology asks us to learn by observing and sitting with the people on your bus without judgment. So when we were talking earlier on about the learning of complexity and the learning of complexity within ourselves, that the bus is really the opportunity to see ourselves not as one coherent being that has a one opinion, but actually asks us to look at the multiple voices that we have and hear within ourselves, the multiple kinds of emotions or affects that things bring up in us that we may or may not understand, and that it is an opportunity for us to sit with those things without judgment, so that they can begin to teach us more about ourselves, to be able to have the capacity to sit with ourselves in that way. So that we can have the capacity to sit with the complexity that is outside of ourselves.
So yeah, we're gonna get into the practice by focusing on the first deck, the me deck that Jocelyn just presented, and really inviting the many voices, as she said.
And the practice is also about embodying and getting in touch with the feelings of that we have in our responses that we have in our bodies. So it is about the bus, but it is also about our embodied experiences with what we will have to offer you. And in today's session, we are going to use the Co-Sensing Radical Tenderness text. Now, I'm just looking at the time to see if there are like burning questions right now that if you could not go forward if you didn't ask this question in this moment, then I think that we have a couple of minutes to be able to do that. So if you did, if you don't, we will move ahead. Okay. I think that is our cue to move ahead, Steven.
Great. So Co-Sensing with Radical Tenderness is a pedagogy that invites us to imagine new ways of relating to ourselves and each other. Through embodiment practices, this method cultivates visceral resiliences in changing realities, so that we may engage with our personal and collective pains, complicities and complexities beyond the rational and discursive. This practice stems from Dani Demila's work with the Decolonial Futures Collective in Brazil, and within decolonial, transfeminist, and performance pedagogies. The work invites us to engage with multiple ways of knowing and with our individual and collective vulnerability. Radical Tenderness asks that we show up willing to stretch beyond our comfort zones, from a consensual and loving, yet critical and non-anthropocentric space. Today, we are limited in our ability to offer and engage with this work due to the technology. We will be working with the Co-Sensing Radical Tenderness text. We will have an opportunity to engage with the text and a pedagogical tool 2 times. So Jocelyn and I will walk you through these 2 readings of the text and offer you time to reflect individually before we share collectively. And we'll bring back the bus methodology at some point and walk you through integrating this into your reflection.
Yeah, and when we say that we're limited because of technology, because often the work that Danny does is very embodied and connected to each other through touch and movement in the same space. So that is what we mean by that. And so what we will be offering is the ability to work with the text by reading it together, bringing it to life together, each having an opportunity to speak some of the words and to hear it collectively. And that is why you all have numbers, just so you know. And so we would ask you to follow along because this is a, as Molly said, larger group than we thought, which is amazing and wonderful. But we wanted to have an opportunity for folks to be able to speak the words and enough of them to really feel the work in a meaningful way. We have split into 2 groups. So the first time we read the poem, we will go through and the first 23 of you will have an opportunity to read. So what we would ask that you do is unmute yourself when it comes to your number. So follow along. And when it comes to your number, unmute yourself and read the text. And we'll go through that way until the end. And this first time of reading, it's really focusing on how you feel it in your body. How does it land in your body? And we will give you an opportunity at the end of that to reflect on how that feels. And then if you're not reading and you're muted, then we would really offer you to be able to say the words out loud to yourself, so you can have that experience and really that is putting it into the wider universe and metabolism that we're all a part of. And so it will make the experience more rich, but to be able to hear individual voices together is also really important. And when we do the second reading, the other part of the group will get to speak out loud to all of us. So encourage you to stay connected to the sensations in your body and your breath as we go through this exercise. And we will give you, again, some time to reflect at the end, which I think I already said. Any questions before we start with the Co-Sensing Radical Tenderness text?
I would also add that if for any reason you don't feel like reading when your time is coming, you can just say pass, and Jocelyn or I will read for you.
Great. And it looks like we are missing number 17 and number 18. So Karen Harwell is on the call, maybe could read number 17, and I would be happy to read number 18, unless Molly, you wanted to read number 18. You want me to read it? Okay, great. So this is going to be our first experiment together. The person who is number 1, do we know who that is? Molly, you know who that is?
That's Anita.
Anita.
Okay.
Jocelyn, I want to change my mind. I do want to be 18.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So Karen Harwell is 17 and Molly is 18. And everybody, just when you see the text come to your number, just unmute yourself. We'll be unmute yourself and read the text, and we'll be really generous with each other. And if there is, if you don't want to read, as Steven said, you can say pass, and we'll see how this goes. It should take between 9 or so minutes to read the text. At least that's how long it took Steven and I, but we were very intentional about really slowly reading it and absorbing it as we did. So, Anita, I'm flipping the slide and you can start us off.
Do you want me to read the whole page, Jocelyn?
Just the first 3 lines.
Yeah.
Beside
And then
the number 1, and then Anna is gonna follow starting from relate.
Okay.
And then Becca at number 3. So you all have kind of 3 lines to read.
Okay.
yeah, and we made a little separation to try to make it easier to see where your number started. Okay.
Co-sense with radical tenderness and accept its invitation to be present. Tune in with the collective body, both human and non-human. Take notice of all the skins and places we inhabit. The bones and lands that bear our weight. Feel your entanglement with everything, including the ugly, the broken, and the fucked up.
Relate beyond desires for coherence, purity, and perfection. Co-sense with radical tenderness and dance beyond the loop of identification and disidentification, beyond what you like and dislike.
Stop trying to shape reality according to narcissistic compulsion for pleasure, comfort, and convenience. Interrupt addictions to consumption, not only of stuff, but also of knowledge, experiences, and relationships. Let go of possessions of possessiveness. Renounce fantasies for comprehension, consensus, and control.
Disarm, declutter, and decenter yourself. Integrate with a wider metabolism, with a much longer temporality than your human body. Follow non-normative and non-linear time.
Deactivate your cravings for protagonism, greatness, and legacy. Stop fearing fear, uncertainty, and emptiness. Be open to the gifts of disillusionment and dissolution. Surrender without collapsing.
Co-sense with radical tenderness and make space for the unknown and the unknowable in ourselves and in others.
Seek sensefulness rather than meaningfulness. Allow your state of wonder to stay open without always trapping it into meaning. Don't hold being hostage to knowing.
Engage with creativity beyond the intellect. Recover exiled capacities, expand sensibilities, and disimmunize intimacies. Notice the ways in which our thoughts and emotions are biophysical processes.
Listen to non-human authorities and care about our relationship with them. Be open to what you can't and may never understand. Don't cast upon everything a blanket of interpretation. Silence the noises preventing you from going deeper, relating wider.
Co-sense with radical tenderness and be receptive to the teachings of your shadows. Mourn your illusions, compost your shit, ferment yourself. Learn from repeated mistakes, make only new ones in the future.
Discover a whole bus of different creatures inside yourself. Look into the mirror and release the fear of disappointability, rejection, and abandonment. Disinvest from arrogance, superiority, and status.
Let go of the fear of being less, the pressure for being more, and the need for validation. Deprivatize failures. Depersonalize lack. We all fuck up, we all cry. Deactivate your expectations for belonging and focus on unlearning the logic of separability.
Embrace yourself as both cute and pathetic. Be courageously vulnerable. Co-sense with radical tenderness and make room for new forms of coexistence to encounter you.
Renounce unrestricted autonomy and the obsession with form. Find stability in the rhythm beneath the movement. Activate the sense of hearing in all parts of your body so that through listening, we can heal each other.
Listen to unuttered wisdom, nurturing intrinsic rather than productive value. Remember that our medicines are both indispensable and insufficient. Let us have each other's backs rather than back each other up.
Tune in rather than emphasize with. There's a difference. Notice how you move between your comfort, stretch, and panic zones. Increase care in proportion to risk. Do it with humility, generosity, and reverence. Dissolve the limits and weight of your body, allowing others to move through, with, and for you.
So, Karen, do you want to read 17? Karen Harwell. All right, I'll read it. Co-sense with radical tenderness and turn the heart into a verb. Corazonar, senti pensar. Look at painful and difficult things with the love of really wanting to see.
I'll do 18.
Okay.
Feel the pain of the earth transpassing you. Understand that the earth is not an extension of our bodies. It's the other way around. Collectivize your heart so that it breaks open and not apart. Let it hold the pain of and in the world without being numbed or overwhelmed.
Witness being in several layers, me in you, us in neither me nor you. Forget being either or, be both and, more and moving. Tend the wounds created when the skin holding one body stretches and tears in order to receive and be refigured by the other.
Condition your intellectual, political, and affective muscles for facing storms and running marathons in tortuous terrains. Allow yourself to be guided by a metabolic intelligence. Enable neurogenesis and learn to breathe and be water.
Co-sense with radical tenderness and practice engaged detachment. Offer palliative care to the dystopic world that is dying, both within and around us. Digest the teachings this death offers. Hold space for your complicity in the violence and unsustainability that have made this world possible.
Co-sense with radical tenderness and assist with the birth of something new without suffocating what is being born with projections and idealizations.
Co-sense with radical tenderness and invoke and evoke in a double and simultaneous movement the manifestation of a political practice of healing and well-being that is beyond what human intelligence can fathom. Allow it to come through you, forever changeable and fluid.
Thank you all for that. Now we're going to give you some time for some reflection, personal reflection, silent reflection. After the next reading, we'll have an opportunity to share and discuss, but we will time now approximately 3 minutes to think about and remember our opening orientation about situating our bodies in this place and space that we're in, and we've just had a collective experience as well. So situating within that, and think about and reflect on how the text and reading the text and hearing the text landed in you, in your physical being, in your space. We're going to ask you while we go through this reading to be observing what is happening on your bus. So thinking about, in particular, see if you can access the person who is driving your bus. If there is a being or person in the middle of your bus, and one in the back of the bus, you know, really paying attention to what's coming up. What are they saying? What's being thought? And what's being felt or anticipated in that time. So this is the opportunity for us to begin to practice the bus, using the bus as a tool for self-reflection and observation. Remembering that we're observing for learning, not for for judgment. And when we do the bus check-in after a short reflection at the end, what we will be asking you to share is what you're learning that you feel is important for this group to hear and to understand, to learn with. Not everything that has happened on your bus, but really what is most important to be shared and learned. So as we go through and you're reading, and again, we would invite those who aren't reading to stay on mute and read out loud to themselves, but really taking some time to observe what's happening on your bus and the people and beings on your bus, because oftentimes it's not people, but other beings on the bus. And so this time we will start with number 24 and I think go through to 46. And just like the last time, if there is a pause and you feel moved to fill in, please do fill in there. And Molly and Steven and I are also here to do that. And if you're not reading, we ask that you mute. Steven, did I miss anything there?
Nope, we're all good.
Okay, so we will go into this second reading now. So number 24.
Kathleen.
Co-sense with radical tenderness and accept its invitation to be present. Tune in with the collective body, both human and non-human. Take notice of all the skins and places we inhabit, the bones and lands that bear our weight. Feel your entanglement with everything, including the ugly, the broken, and the fucked up.
Relate beyond desires for coherence, purity, and perfection. Co-sense with radical tenderness and dance beyond the loop of identification and disidentification, beyond what you like and dislike.
Stop trying to shape reality according to narcissistic compulsion for pleasure, comfort, and convenience. Interrupt addictions to consumption, not only of stuff, but also of knowledge, experiences, and relationships. Let go of possessions, of possessiveness. Renounce fantasies for comprehension, consensus, and control.
Disarm, declutter, and decenter yourself. Integrate with a wider metabolism with a much longer temporality than your human body. Follow non-normative and non-linear time. Deactivate your cravings for protagonism, greatness, and legacy. Stop fearing fear, uncertainty, and emptiness. Be open to the gifts of disillusionment and dissolution. Surrender without collapsing.
Co-sense with radical tenderness and make space for the unknown and the unknowable in ourselves and in others.
Seek sensefulness rather than meaninglessness. Allow your state of wonder to stay open without always trapping it into meaning. Don't hold being hostage to knowing.
Engage with creativity beyond the intellect. Recover exiled capacities, expand sensibilities, and disimmunize intimacies. Notice the ways in which our thoughts and emotions are biophysical processes.
Listen to non-human authorities and care about our relationship with them. Be open to what you can't and may never understand. Don't cast upon everything a blanket of interpretation. Silence the noises preventing you from going deeper, relating wider.
Co-sense with radical tenderness and be receptive to the teachings of your shadows. Mourn your illusions, compost your shit, ferment yourself. Learn from repeated mistakes. Make only new ones in the future.
Discover a whole vast of different creatures inside yourself. Look into the mirror and realize the fear of disappointability, rejection, and abandonment. Disinvest from arrogance, superiority, and status.
Let go of the fear of being less, the pressure for being more, and the need for validation. Deprivatize failures, depersonalize lack. We all fuck up. We all cry. Deactivate your expectations for belonging and focus on unlearning the logic of separability.
Embrace yourself as both cute and pathetic. Be courageously vulnerable. Co-sense with radical tenderness and make room for new forms of coexistence to encounter you.
Renounce unrestricted autonomy and the obsession with form. Find stability in the rhythm beneath the movement. Activate the sense of hearing in all parts of your body so that through listening, we can heal each other.
Listen to unuttered wisdom, nurturing intrinsic rather than productive value. Remember that our medicines are both indispensable and insufficient. Let us have each other's backs rather than backing each other up.
Tune in rather than empathize with. There's a difference. Notice how you move between your comfort, stretch, and panic zones. Increase care in proportion to risk. Do it with humility, generosity, and reverence.
Dissolve the limits and weight of your body, allowing others to move through, with, and for you. Co-sense with radical tenderness and turn the heart into a verb. Corazonar, senti pensar. Look at painful and difficult things with the love of really wanting to see.
Feel the pain of the earth passing you. Understand that the earth is not an extension of our bodies, it's the other way around. Collectivize your heart so that it breaks open and not apart. Let it hold all the pain of and in the world without being numbed or overwhelmed.
Witness being in several layers. Me and you, me in you, us in neither me nor you. Forget being either, or be both and more and moving. Tend the wounds created when the skin holding one body stretches and tears in order to receive and be refigured by another.
Condition your intellectual, political, and affective muscles for facing storms and running marathons in tortuous terrains. Allow yourself to be guided by a metabolic intelligence. Enable neurogenesis and learn to breathe and be water.
Co-sense with radical tenderness and practice engaged detachment. Offer palliative care to the dystopic world that is dying, both within and around us. Digest the teachings this death offers. Hold space for your complicity in the violence and unsustainability that have made this world possible.
Co-sense with radical tenderness and assist with the birth of something new without suffocating what is being born with projections and idealizations.
Co-sense with radical tenderness and invoke and evoke in a double and simultaneous movement. The manifestation of a political practice of healing and well-being that is beyond what human intelligence can fathom. Allow it to come through you, forever changeable and fluid.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you. This was lovely. So now we're getting to the bus check-in. So this will be an opportunity for you to share what you have learned from your observations of the bus. It is important to emphasize that you're not being asked to describe what is happening on your bus or in the observation itself, but what you are learning about this observation and this reaction. And the process of observing your own reaction in itself. You can use this image as an example if you want, but the focus of the conversation need to be kind of meta-analytic. So related to the process of learning and all-learning in self that we are experiencing together, and not confessional. So it's not about confessing what's happening in your bus, but really sharing what you think we can learn also from your own experience and what is happening. So you will be invited to share with the group, and because of the time and the number of people, we won't all be able to share as much as we want, but that's also why there are other spaces to sink it in, and you also have the material to sit with it. But when you share with the group, or when you reflect, so you think about things that may have surprised you from the exercise of observing yourself in the process. And the current state of your bus. So whether it seems A, okay, B, if things are being processed, or see if there's something burning on your bus that needs to be expressed or vented. So taking this metaphor of the bus further, sometimes when the bus is traveling too fast or through windy or rocky roads, some individual passengers can get nauseous. And therefore, sometimes our buses needs to stop so those passengers can vomit. In this methodology, we use the idea of holding the vomit bucket. So that's our collective space here. And this is used as an invited agreement for non-judgmental listening of something that we may not completely identify with within our own buses, but that needs to be expressed by someone. So if when you're reflecting about your bus and something is really burning and it even feels like, even in your body, it feels like this vomit sensation, you will ask for the bucket, and we will check with the group if people are okay with listening to something that is potentially triggering, and to do it without judgment, and that they feel they can welcoming without being triggered by themselves. And if it is the case and some people don't feel that it's the right moment for them, you can even close the camera and exit the room for a minute. So I'm gonna stop there, and then we're just gonna practice it together, and you can just follow along. So for now, I'm just gonna shut up and let you reflect for 3 minutes about what is the conversation in your bus and what is the state of your bus.